What's up, fam? It's your girl Yoga by Biola here with a YouTube video. Per the title of this video, we are going to be talking about some self-love today, y'all. One of my favorite topics. In order to make sure that this video stays in a certain amount of time and I'm not rambling on, which I have the tendency to do, I've separated the video into 5 topics. So the first way that I began to love myself or enter this process of self-love was actually unlearning. Unlearn the aspects of myself that my family had said was one way and learn it a new way for myself, which can be a little bit uncomfortable, but it can also be really exciting, an opportunity for you to kind of take on life through your lens and create the reality that you want to see by becoming really aware of the things that you learned in your childhood or in your teenage years that just don't feel good for you anymore, that actually have a low vibrational emotion attached to them, and unlearning that so you can have more of an expanded emotion related to that space. I had to specifically unlearn a lot of the things that I had learned and adopted in childhood in terms of what my worth was, what I attached my worth to, who I was in my family's eyes, who I was in society's eyes, what my actions meant. There was a lot of shame and guilt attached to, my personality, speaking my mind, being my own person. And so I had to unlearn all of those things that caused me to feel that way, that caused me to be ashamed of being an individual, that caused me to feel shame and guilt for being expressive. So all of those aspects of myself that I was shaming and that I had learned to be guilty of, I had to unlearn all of that. The second way that I began to enter this process of self-love was actually learning to examine myself without judgment or guilt. One of the things that has been huge in my enlightenment or spirituality journey has been examining myself, looking at myself, self-reflecting. There's so many times where we want to kind of create this perfect picture of ourselves in our head, and in reality that's not actually what's taking place. So I had to really become uncomfortable and look at a lot of the shadow areas within my body and my being and really examine them, learn the root, where they came from, and really start to look at them without shame or guilt. Because what tends to happen if you feel a lot of shame or guilt associated with looking at yourself, you're going to try to avoid looking there at all costs. So beginning to really look at yourself, see what's there, see the heaviness that you carry without judging yourself for having it or feeling guilty for having it as well. The third way I began to enter in this process of self-love or loving oneself was by setting boundaries, and this is a huge reality check. If you're a people pleaser or have been in the past like myself, you don't set no boundaries. You don't want to set a boundary because you don't want the lost opportunity of someone feeling like they need you and the dopamine effect that you get from that needing. I don't know if that makes sense. For me, basically, setting boundaries was really hard because I was just so used to kind of moving in a way that pleased everyone but myself, and I didn't want to miss the opportunity of pleasing someone else because there was a dopamine release that I got. It almost brought more worth to my reality for someone to need me or to please someone and to get some type of reaction from them. But at the same time, that was causing me so much harm because I was allowing myself to be put in situations where I was constantly taken advantage of, and I was never ever being respected. And so I had to really begin to set boundaries, not only within my family, but in a lot of my friendships, to really say, hey, if we're going to continue this connection, this is the way, this is one of the ways that I feel respected and loved in this connection, and this is what's going to help me as I continue forward within this connection with you. But also being really aware that once you set up a boundary, you have to allow yourself to be receptive of other people's boundaries as well. Which leads me into the fourth way that I begin to enter this process of self-love, and that's by being receptive. As I continue to set these boundaries, I started to create more and more love-based relationships where a lot of my friends and families were disclosing a lot of things about myself that had made them uncomfortable in the past, or that was making them uncomfortable in the present. And I had to be receptive of that and adjust myself accordingly in my self-reflection. I had to learn to receive a lot of the aspects of myself that I had shamed because of things that I had learned about myself, or things that I had learned from family or societal norms or authority figures, identifications that I had taken on that they had given me that caused me to have a lot of shame associated with different aspects of my being. And so I was not receptive to those areas of myself. I was actually negating them, and as a result rejecting them, which is, not an aspect of love. So I had to come to a space of receiving all of the aspects of myself, whether they were shadow or light, and begin to receive them as aspects and beings of myself. I also included my ego. A lot of the times in the yoga arena, you might hear this idea of shaming the ego or negating the ego, but the ego is actually an aspect of yourself. And it needs to be matured. It doesn't need to be negated. So I began to allow myself to receive these different aspects in order to mature the areas that were shadow, mature them up, and elevate all aspects of myself in love by first receiving them just as they are. Which brings me to my fifth and my final way that I've really began to enter in this process of self-love. And I say process because it is a process. It's not like you're just gonna dramatically jump into wholesome, full unconditional love right away. It's a process, just like forgiveness is a process. So the fifth way that I've really entered in this process of self-love is receiving that I'm a being of love. Just receiving that all of the molecules and the atoms and the fibers that make me up are aspects of creation, of sovereign spirit, of sovereign God, who is love. I'm literally made up of that fiber. So really beginning to receive that I am made up of the very essence of love, not because of anything extraordinary that I do, or anything amazing that I've said, or anything anything external because of my looks or my body or my performance. None of that. None of that. I am love because I am an aspect or made in the image of the divine sovereign spirit who is love, who created all things, who is sovereign. I am part of that. And so beginning to allow myself to receive that I am made in the image of the sovereign spirit of divine Father, divine God, who is love, has allowed me to really begin to receive that I am a being of love just because of the essence of who I am and whose I am, which has been super profound. Now I hope that these tips were enlightening for you. I hope that they really allow you to begin to enter in this process of self-love towards yourself. And if anything came up, please leave it in the comments and the description box below. Share with me what came up for you, what you think of these tips and these ways, and if you have any of your own. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you like what you heard, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more enlightening tips with your girl Yoga by Biola every Monday. In the meantime, don't forget to follow me on the gram at Yoga by Biola, where I'm always sharing that good. And I'll see you guys next week with another video very soon. I'll see y'all later.